Welcome back to College Hill Farm. Well, it's time for another sage advice from the tractor shed. At what age is the best for homesteaders to start homesteading? Well, when you think about it, it's hard for an old person to start homesteading, and it's hard for a young person to start homesteading. So your average homesteader is probably going to start somewhere in the middle. If you take someone's age, multiply it by 3. If that's a reasonable age to be alive, they're not middle-aged yet, okay? So at 33, if you multiply it by 3, 99. Not many people make it to be 99, okay? So that's not reasonable to be that you're going to make it to be 99 years old. Neither my grandparents nor great-grandparents made it to that level. They did make it to 93 and 94, but not 99. So if you think about that, then 33 is midlife. I know. Somewhere between 33 and 38 is midlife. That's when you should have your midlife crisis, not when you're 50, okay? 50 is not the new 30. Yeah, you know what that is. All right. So let's talk about at what age is best to start your homestead journey. Okay. Under 20 is very uncommon to start a homestead journey unless you were raised to this. I was raised to it, okay? I was doing this stuff at 8 years old, all right? So I was raised to it, raised doing this kind of thing, raised eating shuck beans, you know. It was just raised hoeing the garden. My grandpa used to joke at me saying, "You're hoeing the morning glories and cutting down the beans." Of course, I wasn't doing that. He just loved the devil, everybody. So, yeah, so before you're 20, unless you were raised to this, you're probably not going to move there. Now, between your 20s and 30s would be a great age to start homesteading, okay? There are going to be some challenges to do that because land prices are so ridiculous, okay? But somebody in their 20s and 30s could get land, pull a camper onto the property, and live there as you built your cabin or home or whatever it was you were going to build. Okay, I love Kyle's Cabin. Have you seen his little show, Kyle's Cabin? He was a younger guy. He worked. He built him a cabin. Didn't go in debt for it. He bought a piece of land, raw land. Of course, it was up in Minnesota, out away from everything, so it was cheap. I don't know if there is any cheap land anymore. Appalachia used to have all kinds of cheap land, but the problem with cheap land is there's no jobs. And I'm just going to tell you, you can't make it homesteading just starting out without having a job, okay? You'll starve to death. So your 20s, there are some great advantages, okay? At 20, I could have walked all over the roof of this tractor shed, just not thinking about it. Just got up there and run all over it. I helped my mother and father. Mom was a carpenter and Dad was an electrician. I helped them. I was the muscle. At 20, I was the muscle running across the rafters, hauling shingles up the ladders. Okay? In your 20s, you have energy to do anything. You can work. It's 100 degrees out. You can drink enough water to just keep working. It's just that easy. You're flexible. You've got time to learn from the screw-ups that you do, you know. But the big challenge for being in your 20s and 30s is that's about the time the kids start coming along, if you have a significant other. Okay? Lately, we've been pushing that back because of the financial constraints. 20-year-olds and 25-year-olds are not having kids. I had my boys, my oldest I had when I was 24, and my youngest was when I was 28. So by the 28, I had both my children. Decided we didn't want any more because that was all we could fiscally say grace over at the time. And neither of my boys have had children, and they're both in their 30s now. So I'm anxious to find out when that's going to happen. I'm ready to be a grandpa. My adopted daughter has a son, but they don't live around here, so I don't get to see him often. So that's just the way that is. But the challenges at 20 are, and between 20 and 30, are you're just getting ready, you're just getting into your career, you have to spend a lot of time working, you're just getting established, your finances are low, so it's really, really hard, but you have the energy to make up for hard. Okay? You have the energy to make up for hard. Alright, the 30s and 40s. That is a great time to start your homestead. At 35, I felt about as good as I did at 25. Okay? I could get out there. I got out there and played basketball with the Vocational Industrial Clubs of America. When we had field day, I played basketball with those young fellas, and we had a good time. Okay? At 40, I was probably getting beyond doing that. But between 30 and 40, a lot of young people have their children. They don't want to raise them around the cities. It's not that cities are terrible, okay? So many people, for political reasons, talk about how dangerous the cities are. Math can be manipulated, okay? Math can be manipulated. Most of the crime in cities has gone down considerably since the 1970s. It's continued to go down, 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 down. They show you all the violence about the cities on the TV because that's what they do to make money. Our local TV station, for example, shows us all these things, if there's a pedophile or if there's a whatever, and then you get to looking at it and you think, well, that's in Lexington. No, it was in Alabama or Oklahoma or Minnesota or California or New York or South Dakota. They show you this stuff and you think, oh man, there's all kinds of crime. Look at all the crime. It was a slow news day, so they grabbed something from 4 or 5 states over, okay, to keep you hyped up. They do it all the time. There's not as much crime in the cities as what some people would want you to think. But living in the cities also has its own problems. And at 30, you'd like to get your kids out and get their fingers in the dirt. Okay? My dad took us to Detroit when I was 6 months old. We went to Detroit, Michigan, and he worked for American Motors, and he worked for a company called Ferndale Fastener. And he was from Appalachia, Harlan County, Kentucky, and Dad was raised on a homestead. All right? My grandfather had a 5-acre homestead, and that's the way Dad was raised. Mom was raised the same way. They both were raised growing big gardens, tending to pigs and cows, and okay? So they wanted to get back to that, and they wanted to have their boys. They had 3 children. They wanted to have their boys come back to that. So we stayed in Michigan 8 years because there was no jobs in Appalachia. And then a coal boom hit, so we went right back to Everett, Kentucky. So there was no big crime spree that drove us back. It was just that desire to come back to the land. And that's what most homesteaders have. Schooling is tough. If you've got pretty smart kids, sometimes the bullies are really, really hard on them. And some homesteaders want to come back to a rural area, and they don't worry about the schools. They want to homeschool. Okay? They want their kids growing up learning to raise a garden, which is what parents should all be doing. Okay? You should be teaching your kid how to raise a garden, how to commune with nature, how to be, that's not the job of a school. That's a parental responsibility, and most people are dropping the ball. It's a parental responsibility. The schools can't take over all the jobs that parents ought to do, like discipline. Okay? It just can't be that way. So in your 30s and 40s, you want your kids to get back in the dirt, and you want to live that self-sufficient rural lifestyle. In your 30s and 40s, you tend to have more money saved up to do those kinds of things. You're young enough that if you have to move into a camper and camp for a while you're building your new home, or you're building a cabin, or you have that opportunity to be able to do that, or a tiny house, or whatever it is that you're going to do on this rural property. You've also established yourself in your career, whether you're a plumber or an electrician or a teacher, or just whatever it is, whether you went to college or you went to technical school. You have to have some kind of technical training. If you're going to go back to Appalachia or go back to a rural area, you've got to have some value-added training, or else you won't be able to make a living in that rural area. That's the way it is. But it's real hard to balance your kids and your jobs and your homestead responsibilities. It's tough to work a 12-hour-a-day job and come home and work 4 hours on your homestead, and then go to bed and start all over tomorrow. That's a tough thing to do. But at 30, you've got all kinds of energy. At 35, you've got all kinds of energy. At 40, your energy starts to wane a little. Now, Crystal and I lived this homestead lifestyle for a long time. We've canned, we've stored, we've put up, we raised big garden. The kids grew up in a way that Crystal was able to stay home with them. We took a financial hit for making those decisions, If you decide that your wife is going to stay home and homeschool the kids, and you're going to make the money, you're going to take a financial hit for that. All right? Today's society is not set up so that a one-income earner can provide. That's one of the failings of our government, the failing to raise the minimum wage like they should have from the 50s. All right? It's a failing of our government. And whether or not you believe that, that's up to you. That's up to you. This is not a political channel, so I'm not doing it that way. But in your 50s is a great time to start a homestead. Now, I'm going to say that Crystal and I came here at 51. I had put in 30 years to my career at that time. I was a physics teacher in high school, physics and chemistry, and then I went to graduate school and I became a physics teacher at the college level, community college, at the technical college to start with. And then we merged with community college, so I was teaching applied physics at the community college, and hydraulics and pneumatics and those kinds of things, engineering type stuff, basic electricity for automotive and all those kinds of things, So I taught those kinds of things, and we bought this, we moved from our half-acre homestead. The boys were all gone. My youngest son went to chiropractic college, and we took him to Spartanburg, South Carolina, and we came home and we decided that it was time for us to start looking. And we started looking for a homestead. We found this one in 2014. We looked at it, we came back to it. I was 51 years old, and in 2014, late November, they had dropped the price on it. And we had the money at that point to pay cash for the property, We had the money to pay cash, but what we did was we financed $30,000 of it, and then we paid cash for the rest of it and kept back $30,000 to do a renovation. And at 51, I had enough energy to renovate this whole house. I was able to climb around up in the loft and run the electric. I was able to climb around a haul the cast iron out of the basement. Okay, put in new water heaters, run all new electric, because the house was made with knob and tube. They had put in a new entryway, but they had just brought that brand new entryway in and then connected over to the knob and tube. So the entire house was knob and tube still. So I had to run new electric over the entire house that I didn't realize was that way until, because they put in that new entrance, I thought, oh, the house has been rewired. No, it hadn't been. So that's okay. I knew it was there. We had an inspector come, and he said, you know, there's energized knob and tube upstairs. I said, well, it's probably just upstairs. It'll be all right. I'll run a thing upstairs. There was knob and tube everywhere. Okay, so I had to do away with knob and tube everywhere. But, you know, that was the way it worked. But at 51, I was ready to start my second career, and my second career was homesteading. And a lot of people do it that way. I had 30 years in. I had a pension. Any money I make here on the homestead is gravy. Okay, my pension supports us. So, but you have to function on smaller scale. Okay, I have hours to do, but I don't have the health to do long hours. So I'm a little smaller scale. We've got a large piece of property. But we had the capital to come into this. When we sold our other house, then we were able to pay that $30,000 mortgage off. Okay, so we're into this place free and clear, except for the taxes we have to pay, $800 a year. It's what our tax bill is, about $800 a year, which, you know, that's not that bad, but you don't own nothing. So if I don't have $800 to pay my taxes, they'll come and take my property. In America, you don't own nothing. Same way with your car. Don't pay your taxes, they won't let you drive it. Eventually they'll come and take it. Just the way it is. So is there a right age for homesteading? If you look at homesteading and you think about the 20s and all the energy you had, and the 30s and the 40s, all the energy you had up to that time. I had all kinds of energy up till about 38, and I had multiple sclerosis. I acquired multiple sclerosis, or at least I got the diagnosis. I was 37 when I started having the symptoms, and then, yeah, things went downhill from there. So, and I had visions of going to be in a wheelchair. That's not what happened. I'm not dead. Life went on. I managed to work until my career was completely fulfilled. So yeah, that's one of those things. Now, as far as the right age, I'd advise you to start homesteading as early as you can. But to be honest, I look at homesteaders that have started homesteading on YouTube, and I think about them. They started with a 2 or 3 acre property, and next thing you know, they bought a 10 acre property. And then the next thing you know, they've bought a 500 acre property. Okay? Then now, they've turned around and bought a farm and going to sell their 500 acre property. Okay? Their off-grid property. And go back to an on-grid farm that's probably 80 or 90 acres, maybe 100 acres. So, it's all in your goals and what you want to do. It's one of the best ways in the world you can raise your children. Okay? Get them in the dirt. Whether you homeschool them or take them to school or avail yourself of public school. However, you know, public school in rural America are not always the best training, but it's training that they may not get at home. You got to evaluate. Can I give my kid the education that they need for 20 years from now? That's what you have to look at the thing about homeschooling. Can I give them the education that they're going to need 20 years from now? So what's going to happen 20 years from now? You've got to be thinking about that. That's always got to be in the back of your mind before you decide how it is you're going to homeschool, or whether you're going to send them to public school. And does public school train them for that education 20 years down the road? But you got to remember, public schools can't do everything. Mom and Dad have to do some of it. Okay? Public schools can't teach your kids how to raise food. They can't teach your kids. You know, they've got ag classes. Okay? I'm not saying that they don't have agriculture classes and that kind of thing. But most people wouldn't know tomato hornworm from any other caterpillar if they saw it. Okay? They wouldn't know why their tomatoes are wilting. They wouldn't know that they need to add calcium to their soil to keep the tomatoes from rotting on the vine. There's just things that have to be experienced. Okay? They have to be experienced. Most FFA, Future Farmers of America, their parents are not living in a housing project or in an apartment. They're not. You know, they're raising a lamb on their property. All right? The ones who show lambs and pigs and stuff like that, 9 times out of 10, they would be showing their kids how to raise a lamb or a pig anyway. Just saying. So, as far as the age is what age you are. Okay, I plan to be doing this into my 70s. I put raised beds out here. I know I'm going to have to do better with those raised beds. I don't like the way I've got them set up. There shouldn't be all that distance between them for crap to grow up in among them. So I'm going to have to get the tractor and push them closer to each other. Okay, that's going to have to happen. So that's going to be one of the things that's got to happen so that I can control the weeds. So that's, yeah, I didn't plan it out as well as I should have, and I should have known. I know how weeds are. If you leave something here, the weeds will grow up among it unless you actively get out there and work it every day. And with the stuff going on here, I haven't been able to work it every day. But like I said, I want to do this into my 70s. Will I be able to do row crop gardening into my 70s? I don't know. But the age that you can start homestead is when you do. You can homestead on 1/4 of an acre. You can raise a lot of food on 1/4 of an acre. Okay? You don't have to raise flowers around your house. When we were on that 1/2 acre, my flower beds were vegetable beds. Okay? I raised vegetables in what most people would have termed as flower beds. I raised vegetables in them. Okay? I had a regular garden about 50 by 100, and then I had every vegetable bed around the house and around 2 houses, because we had 2 houses on the property. Around those 2 houses was garden produce. Now, if you like this stuff, this homesteading, do-it-yourself kind of thing, be certain to come on out to the channel and subscribe. We do this homesteading stuff every week, sometimes 1, sometimes 5 videos. Just depends on what's going on in the homestead that week. Now, if you hit the little bell, it'll be right up here when we come to the channel. It'll notify you when we upload a video. We upload on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, with occasional short on Saturday and through the week. Now, time for me to get on to the next thing. I love you all.